I signed my divorce papers at exactly 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. By 4 p.m., I was sitting across from a woman who told me my life was about to get much, much worse. I'm a copywriter. I sell stories for a living. But this story? This one I lived. And it still doesn't feel real. It was October 2022. The air in Manhattan was that specific kind of humid cold, the kind that gets into your bones. I walked out of the courthouse on Center Street feeling light. Too light. Like someone had cut the tether to my balloon. I was wearing this beige trench coat I bought on sale at Bloomingdale's. My heels clicked on the gray carpet as I walked out of room 304. The judge had banged his wooden gavel. Just like that. 12 years of marriage, gone. I should have gone to Keisha's place. I should have ordered a margarita. But no, I had this weird itch in my brain. A need for validation. Or maybe a warning. So I turned left on Houston Street. I walked until I saw the flickering neon sign, the Mystic Eye. It's this cramped little shop in the East Village, sandwiched between a bodega and a dry cleaner. You know the smell. It's like someone set a bundle of sage on fire and then tried to cover it with bleach. I pushed open the creaky glass door. A bell chimed above my head. Dust motes were dancing in the shaft of light coming from the street. There were crystals everywhere, amethyst, rose quartz, things that looked like alien eggs. The reader was waiting in the back. Her name tag just said Celeste. She had this wild curly hair. She was wearing a silk scarf covered in moons and stars. Her nails were long, painted this chipped black polish. She gestured to the chair in front of her. It was a wooden chair with a wicker back. It looked like it belonged in a museum. I sat down. My purse landed on the table with a heavy thud. I remember reaching for my phone. I took a photo of the empty table. I don't know why. Just a nervous habit. But I'm glad I did now, because that photo is the only proof I have of what happened next. Here is the first red flag. A big, waving red flag. I sat down. I didn't say a word. I didn't give my name. Celeste looked me right in the eye. She smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was knowing. She said, "Hello, Xiomara. You're ready to start over, aren't you?" My stomach dropped. Dios mío. I felt like I'd been punched. I looked around the shop. Was there a camera? A sign-in sheet? Nothing. Just us. I laughed nervously. Yeah, just got divorced, actually. She nodded, like she already knew. No way, Jose. That was not normal. She told me to shuffle the deck. The cards were thick. They had gold edges that were flaking off. My hands were shaking. I could hear the rain starting to hit the window. Tap, tap, tap. I cut the deck. I laid out 3 cards, face down. The room felt suddenly freezing. The hair on my arm stood up. Celeste reached out. Her fingers had these heavy silver rings on them. She turned over the first card, the Tower. It's a scary card. A tall tower being struck by lightning, people falling to the ground, complete destruction. It represents a sudden, violent upheaval. Great timing, right? I mean, I had just legally upended my life. Then she turned the second card, the Moon. A wolf howling at a moon between 2 towers. Illusion, fear, anxiety, things not being what they seem. I started to feel sick, like I had swallowed a stone. I looked at the third card. I didn't want to flip it. She flipped it for me. 10 of Swords. A man lying face down in the dirt. 10 swords stabbed into his back. Betrayal. Painful endings. Total defeat. I stared at that picture. The man was dead. There was no coming back from 10 swords in the back. Celeste leaned in close. Her perfume smelled like gardenias. Funerary gardenias. She whispered, "The tower has fallen for you, Xiomara. But the rubble is still shifting. The danger isn't past, it's just beginning." She touched my hand. Her skin was ice cold. "A collapse is imminent. Watch your back." I pulled my hand away fast. I knocked my phone onto the floor. Screen down. I scrambled to pick it up. My heart was hammering in my throat. Thump, thump, thump. I told myself she was a fraud. A cold reader. Looking at my tan line where my wedding ring used to be. Looking at my red eyes from crying in the Uber. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. The sound echoed in the tiny room. I opened my wallet. I threw 2 $20 bills on the table. I didn't wait for change. I didn't want her looking at me anymore. Those eyes, they were too dark. I walked out into the rain. It was pouring. A real New York downpour. My coat was soaked in seconds. You know that feeling when you're so overwhelmed you just want to scream? I wanted to scream, but I just walked faster. If you've ever had a gut feeling that something is wrong, you know what I mean. It's not logical. It's primal. I should have listened to it. I really should have. I want to know what you would have done. Would you have run or would you have dismissed it like I did? I laughed it off, paid $40, and walked into the rain. I didn't know that within 24 hours, my literal world was gonna collapse. I walked home in the rain thinking I was safe. I was wrong. The universe wasn't done with me yet. The next evening, I was in my Williamsburg apartment. It was Wednesday around 6:45 p.m. I had a glass of Merlot on the coffee table. I was finally relaxing. Then came a sound like a gunshot. Boom. It came from the ceiling directly above my head. Before I could look up, brown water exploded from the plaster. It hit me right in the face. Cold. Dirty, tasting like rust and old pennies. I dropped my wine. The glass shattered on the hardwood floor. Red wine mixed with brown water. A toxic cocktail spreading across the rug. The water kept coming. It was like a waterfall in my living room. My white couch was instantly soaked. It looked like a giant wet sponge. I screamed. I ran for the door, slipping in the sludge. My socks were squelching in my shoes. My hands were shaking too hard to dial the super. I just stood there in the hallway, watching my life get washed away. Then, through the panic, I remembered the card, the tower, lightning striking a fortress. Total destruction. I stopped screaming. I started laughing, hysterical, ugly laughter. Ay Dios mío, the reading was less than 24 hours ago. The danger isn't past, she had said. It's just beginning. It made me remember something else, she whispered while shuffling the deck. I used to work in structural engineering, she told me. Her hands were covered in silver rings. Before the spirits called, I knew exactly how buildings collapse. I had dismissed it then. Just another New York weirdo with a backstory. Now, with water dripping from the light fixture, it felt weirdly specific. The smell was getting worse. It wasn't just water anymore, it was sewage. I could see the drywall bubbling on the ceiling, big, wet blisters ready to pop. My bookshelf was next. The bottom row was already underwater. First editions of Joan Didion turning into pulp. My record collection was floating. Bob Dylan faces spinning in the brown sludge. The super, a guy named Tony, finally showed up with a wrench. He looked at the ceiling and whistled. Meme line, he said. Total blowout. I didn't tell him about the tarot reading. I didn't want to be the crazy divorce lady, but the timing, it was too perfect. Celeste said, within a day, everything changes. Here I was, homeless, wet, cold. You know that feeling when your gut is screaming, but your brain keeps making excuses? I crawled back inside to grab my laptop. The screen was dripping. I slipped on a wet magazine and almost fell. That was close. I made it to the coffee table and grabbed my phone. I needed proof, evidence that this wasn't just bad luck. I took a photo of the disaster zone. Dark water covering the hardwood, the sofa looking like a drowned animal. I looked at the timestamp on the photo, 6:47 p.m., less than a day after she pulled that card. I texted Keisha the picture. My thumbs were wet and slipping on the screen. I wrote, the tarot lady was right. The tower fell. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then her reply popped up. It's a coincidence, Mara. Old buildings have pipes. I stared at those words. They didn't comfort me. They terrified me, because if it wasn't a coincidence, if it wasn't the building, then who turned the knob? I spent the night in a basement apartment in Bushwick. It smelled like wet dog and old cigarettes. The air was so thick I could taste it. I lay on a mattress that felt like a bag of rocks. I stared at the water stains on the ceiling. They looked like maps of countries I didn't want to visit. My phone buzzed on the nightstand at 8 a.m. It was a notification from my insurance app. The alert read, claim accepted. Total loss. I opened the photos from the night before. There was the picture of my living room. Water was pouring from the light fixture. The timestamp said 6:47 p.m., exactly 24 hours after Celeste dealt the cards. I should have bought a lottery ticket instead of a tarot reading. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, but I couldn't stay in that basement. I felt like the walls were closing in on me. I needed answers. I got up and put on my beige trench coat. I walked out into the morning. The sky was a bruised purple color. Puddles on the sidewalk reflected the gray buildings. I walked toward Houston Street. I needed to know what was coming next. I stood in front of the Mystic Eye. The neon sign buzzed in the daylight. I pushed the door open. A bell chimed above my head. The smell hit me immediately. Burning sage, Palo Santo. My chest tightened. I hate that smell. It smells like secrets and lies. The shop was dark. Shelves of amethyst and rose quartz lined the walls. Celeste was sitting at the wooden table in the back. She was shuffling her deck. The cards had gold edges. She looked up at me. She didn't look surprised to see me. I walked over to the table. I sat down in the wicker chair. It creaked under my weight. I pulled $40 out of my wallet. I threw 2 crisp 20s on the table. I said, "Do it again. Same spread. Tell me what you would have done. Would you have gone back, or would you have run for the hills?" She nodded slowly. She picked up the deck. Her hands moved fast. She pulled the first card. She flipped it over. The tower, a crumbling building, lightning, fire. I felt my hands get cold. The moon, a wolf howling at a crescent shape. I asked her what the moon meant. She pulled the third, 10 of swords, a man face down in the dirt, 10 swords in his back. I stared at the table. They were the exact same cards. I picked up my phone. I opened my notes app. I typed same cards. Again, WTH. I held the screen up to the camera. I looked at her. I asked, "How are they the same?" She leaned forward. Her silver rings clinked against the wood. She said, "The first wave was just structural." She tapped the tower card with one long fingernail. She whispered, "The next is emotional." I felt the blood drain from my face. If you've ever felt like the ground is disappearing beneath you, you know this feeling. I was spiraling. She didn't blink. She leaned in closer. She whispered, "It means you aren't seeing things clearly, Shomara." She paused for effect. "Someone is deceiving you." I walked out of the psychic shop feeling like I had a target on my back. But I still had a job. I had to go to work. I needed normalcy. I needed air conditioning. I got to the Ogilvy office on Hudson Street around 9:30 a.m. The lobby smelled like espresso in desperation. I swiped my badge. The light turned green. Beep, I told myself I was safe here. It's just ad copy. It's not life or death. I was wrong. At 10 a.m. my phone buzzed. It was Sheila from HR. "Conference room B, now. No please. No hello, just commands." I walked into the conference room. The blinds were drawn. Dave, my creative director, was sitting there. He looked gray, like he hadn't slept in a week. Sheila pushed a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of an email, a forwarded email. The subject line said, "Urgent, security breach, copywriter Xiomara Rodriguez." My name was right there in black and white. I looked at the sender address. Concerned. Citizen88@gmail.com. I almost laughed. Dios mío, it was so cliche. But Dave wasn't laughing. Sheila looked at me over her glasses. She said, "We received an anonymous tip, alleging you sold client campaign concepts to a competitor." I froze. Sold campaigns? I can barely sell my old clothes on Poshmark. I said, "This is a joke, right? I don't even have the budget files for that account." Sheila handed me an envelope. "We have to take this seriously, Shomara. You are suspended pending a full forensic audit." The room started spinning. I heard a buzzing in my ears, like a fly trapped in a jar. Then I remembered the card, the moon, illusion, deception. Someone is lying. And now I'm the one being blamed. Who sent that email? Mateo? No, he's too lazy. A rival at work? Or someone closer? Have you ever had that feeling where the walls are closing in? Like everyone is in on a joke except you? That was me. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked out. I didn't even grab my plant. I just left. I walked down to the water. Hudson River Park. The wind was coming off the river. It was cold. Cutting right through my blazer. I sat on a wooden bench. I watched the ferry go by, and then I just broke. Tears streaming down my face, ruined mascara, black stains on my collar. I sat there for an hour, just watching the water. But then the crying stopped, and the heat started, a fire in my chest. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I looked at the city skyline. I sat on a bench in Hudson River Park and cried. But then I got angry. I don't believe in curses. I believe in saboteurs. I left the park. I couldn't sit there anymore. The wind was cutting through my coat. I needed a drink. Something strong. Something to quiet the noise in my head. I texted Keisha. One word, drinks. By the time I got to the rooftop bar in Chelsea, the sun was going down. The city looked blood orange and bruised. Keisha was already at a high-top table near the edge. She had a half-empty martini in front of her. Her phone was face down. You know that look? The one that says she's been waiting to rip you a new one? She had that look. I sat down. The metal stool was cold. You look like hell, she said. I flagged down a waitress. Gin and tonic. Double. I turned to Keisha. I feel like hell. The waitress dropped off the drink. Condensation was already forming on the glass. I took a long pull. It burned. Good. Keisha leaned in. Her voice dropped an octave. It's Mateo. I'm telling you, Mara, it has to be. I laughed. A dry, ugly sound. Mateo? Seriously? I shook my head. Babe, please. I swirled the ice in my glass. Do you know how much effort a long con takes? Keisha didn't smile. He wants you to crumble. He wants you to look unstable so he gets full custody. I stared at her. Mateo is too lazy to be a mastermind. He thinks doing laundry is a sport. I took another drink. The gin was hitting me now. My shoulders finally dropped an inch. But my mind was racing. I kept thinking about Celeste. That back room in the shop. The smell of dust and sage. I remembered her hands, shuffling the cards. She had this ring, a heavy silver band with a massive black stone in the center. Onyx, maybe? It caught the candlelight every time she moved. It looked expensive. Cold. It looked just like the ring Mateo bought years ago. The one he claimed was an investment, but then conveniently lost during our move. I told myself I was connecting dots that didn't exist, but the image of that silver ring wouldn't leave my brain. You're defending him, Keisha snapped. She took aggressive sip of her martini. Why are you always defending him? I opened my mouth to argue. Then she slid her phone across the table. Fine, defend this. The screen was bright against the dark table. It was a photo. From that morning. From my fire escape. I walked by your place on my way here, Keisha said. I saw it through the binoculars. I squinted at the screen. It was a pigeon. Dead. Very dead. Its wings were splayed out. One was bent backward at a weird angle. The neck was twisted. The eyes were glassy and gray. It was gross. But it wasn't just gross. It looked deliberate. It was perched right on the railing, like it had been placed there for an audience. Gross, Keisha. Thanks, I said. I went to push the phone away, but she held her finger on the screen. Look closer, Mara. I looked. The bird's chest was speared. Not by a beak. It looked like a nail. Or a long needle. The 10 of swords, she whispered. The blood froze in my veins. The tarot card. 10 swords in a back. Ruin. Betrayal. It represents a bird in hand, she said, or a betrayal that cuts deep. I stared at the dead bird on the screen, the way its little foot was curled up. It wasn't random. Nothing was random anymore. If your pipes burst and your job tanks, what's next, Mara? The 10 of swords means backstabbing literally. She didn't know how right she was. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done. Because I sat there staring at that dead bird, and I felt pure terror. If this story is getting to you, hit that like button. It helps me know I'm not screaming into the void. Subscribe if you want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Turn on notifications because things are moving fast now. And drop a comment. Tell me if you think I'm crazy or if you see the pattern too. I read every single one. You know that feeling when your stomach drops? Not on a roller coaster. In real life. That was me on the BQE Friday morning. I was driving my Honda Civic. The only thing that a divorce judge didn't split in half. Traffic was bumper to bumper. Stop and go. Typical New York hell. I was merging onto the expressway heading toward the Kosciuszko Bridge. The sun was glaring off the asphalt. I needed to slow down for the red brake lights in front of me. I lifted my foot off the gas. Then I tapped the brake pedal. Nothing happened. The pedal went all the way to the floor mat. It felt like stepping on a wet sponge. No resistance, no pressure, just mush. I slammed it again. Still nothing. We were doing 60 miles an hour. The red taillights were getting closer and closer. My heart stopped. My stomach hit my spine. I yanked the wheel hard to the left. I aimed for the concrete median. Metal screamed against concrete. Sparks flew everywhere like the 4th of July. The car ground against the wall. The smell of burning rubber filled the cabin. I finally stopped, just inches from a tanker truck. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't unbuckle the seatbelt. I just sat there, hyperventilating. People were honking, screaming, flipping me off. They thought I was a bad driver. They didn't know I was almost murdered. 2 hours later, I was at Tony's Auto on Kent Avenue. Tony is a big guy. Gray stains on his shirt. He knows my car. He looked at the mangled side panel. Then he looked at me. He didn't say a word. He just pointed a wrench at the undercarriage. He said, "Xiomara, you need to see this." I crouched down on the oily pavement. The brake line was dangling there. It looked like a snapped rubber band. But then I looked closer. There was a clean cut. A perfect slice. Tony wiped his hands on a red rag. His face was dead serious. He said, "This wasn't wear and tear. This was a razor blade. Someone cut your lines." I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't a flooded apartment. This wasn't a dead bird. This was a hit. Tony handed me the invoice. It listed the damage. But at the bottom, in red pen, he'd written, "Call the cops." Sabotage. The total was $400. The note was priceless. I thought about the tower card. Collapse? Destruction. Celeste said it was coming. She didn't say it would be my plumbing this time. She said it would be structural. If you've ever had that gut instinct that something is wrong, you know what I mean. I wasn't crazy. I was a target. I called the police immediately. 2 officers showed up at the shop. They looked under the car. They took the invoice, but then they asked about cameras. I park in a shared garage downtown. No security cameras. The cop, Officer Miller, just shrugged. He said, "Without footage, it's your word against nothing. Civil matter, maybe." Civil matter? I almost died on the BQE. He handed me a card with a case number. Just a piece of paper. I stood there in the parking lot. The sun was setting. I looked at the invoice in my hand. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, but this wasn't funny. I realized then that the system couldn't protect me. The law needed evidence. Evidence I didn't have yet. But I knew who was doing this. It was Mateo, or Celeste, or both of them together. And if I didn't stop them, the next collapse would be permanent. What would you do in this situation? Because I honestly didn't know if I was safe anymore. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to be a victim. I called the police. But without cameras in my garage, they said it was my word against nothing. That's when I realized I needed to catch them myself. I couldn't drive the Civic, not with brake lines sliced like deli meat. I left it at Tony's shop on Kent Avenue. I took an Uber to the Airbnb in Bushwick. It was a damp, windowless basement apartment. It smelled like mildew and old cat litter. I dropped my bag on the floor. The lock on the door looked flimsy. A simple twist knob, too flimsy for a stalker. I sat on the sagging beige couch and pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking a little. I opened the Amazon app. My finger hovered over the order history. Adios mio. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, but Amazon Prime is faster. There it was. Mini spy camera Wi-Fi HD. Delivered 2 days ago. Best $40 I ever spent. I unpacked the tiny black lens from the box. It was the size of a thumb drive. I dragged a wobbly bar stool over to the front door. I climbed up carefully. The stool wobbled under my heels. I pressed the camera right above the metal peephole. Then I placed another one hidden inside the fake fern on the coffee table. I opened the security app on my phone. The grainy night vision feed popped up instantly. I saw myself on the screen, hunched over on the stool. I looked like a complete lunatic. Hair frizzy, eyes wide, like a ghost haunting my own life. I checked the angles. The living room was covered. The hallway was covered. If anyone walked through that door, I would see them. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done. If someone cut your brakes, would you hide? Or would you set a trap? I wasn't hiding anymore. I picked up the old digital voice recorder from my bag. It was a relic from my journalism days. I clipped it inside my bra, right against my ribs. The plastic casing felt cold against my skin. I texted Keisha a screenshot of the camera feed. Setting the trap, I typed. I didn't tell her where I was going. She would try to stop me. She would tell me I was paranoid. She would tell me to call the cops. But Officer Miller didn't care. He gave me a case number and a shrug. I was on my own. I looked at the photo of Celeste on my phone. That heavy silver ring with the black stone, it was Mateo's ring. I was sure of it. She had the motive. She had the engineering knowledge for the pipes. And now, the brakes. It was all connected. The tower. The moon. 10 of Swords. She was living the cards out in real time. I threw on my beige trench coat. It was just past 9 o'clock. The Mystic Eye would be closing soon on Houston Street. I needed to get there before she flipped the sign to closed. I stepped into the waiting Uber. My hands were steady, but my heart was hammering in my throat. The driver didn't say a word. He just drove downtown. Walking back in there felt like walking into a lion's den. But I had to do it. I had to hear her voice. I had to see her face when I lied to her. I was going to ask Celeste about my future, but really, I was just checking to see if she had a past. With me. The neon sign buzzed overhead. The Mystic Eye. I was back. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I opened the door. The smell of Palo Santo hit me instantly. It made me sick. Celeste was sitting at the round table in the back. She didn't look surprised. She was just shuffling her deck, those gold edges glinting in the dim light. I sat down opposite her. My coat was buttoned to my chin. The voice recorder in my bra was digging into my skin. I pressed record. I looked her dead in the eye. I asked, "Who are you really?" She just smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a smile that knew too much. She didn't answer me. She just slid one card across the velvet cloth. It was face down. I flipped it over. The lovers. But it was reversed. Upside down. A toxic union, she whispered. Her voice was raspy, like gravel. But not the one you're thinking of, she said. My blood ran cold. I was wearing a red dress. It was hidden under my heavy trench coat. I hadn't shown it to anyone. Not even Keisha. I was saving it for tonight, to feel powerful. But Celeste said the red dress was a bold choice. It clashes with your aura. I froze, my hands gripping the edge of the table. How could she know? I asked myself. Is she psychic, or did she stand in my bedroom while I slept? The recorder was still running. I was praying it was catching every word. She kept talking. She said my car trouble was just the beginning. A structural failure, she called it, like the pipes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table. But I just sat there, trapped in that chair. She reached for my hand. Her skin was ice cold. She turned my palm over. You have a long lifeline, she said. But it's fraying at the end. I snatched my hand back. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. I turned and walked out. The bell above the door jingled. It sounded like a laugh. I walked out of there shaking. She was either a psychic or she had been in my apartment, and I didn't know which was scarier. I practically sprinted down the block. The neon sign of the Mystic Eye buzzed behind me. Like a fly I couldn't swat away. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Hard. She knew about the red dress, the one hanging in the back of my closet. That meant she had been in there, or watched me put it on. I felt dirty, like I needed to scrub my skin off with steel wool. I hailed the first cab I saw. Bushwick, I told the driver. My voice sounded shaky. Even to me, you know that feeling when your gut screams that you're being hunted? That was me. I kept checking the window, looking for a black sedan, or maybe a psychic with a grudge. We pulled up to the Airbnb 20 minutes later. The brownstone looked dark. Quiet. Too quiet. I paid the driver and scrambled up the steps. I locked the door behind me 3 times. Even though I knew that lock was garbage, I dropped my bag on the floor, pulled out my phone. My hands were trembling. I needed to check the cameras. I bought them on Amazon 2 days ago. Best $40 I ever spent. I opened the app, scrolled to the hallway camera feed. I rewound to last night. Around 3 in the morning, I was asleep, dead to the world. The screen showed the empty hallway, grainy black and white night vision. Suddenly, the motion sensor kicked in. The hallway light flickered on. A figure appeared. Hood up, head down. They were walking fast, too fast. They stopped right in front of my door. I held my breath. They looked around left, then right, checking for witnesses. The figure turned slightly toward the camera, and I froze. My blood turned to ice. I know that face, that nose, that nervous jaw tick. Ay Dios mío. It was Mateo, my ex-husband, the lazy liar, standing in my hallway at 3 a.m. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't try the handle. He bent down, slid something white into the door, an envelope. Then he turned and ran, like a coward. I stared at the screen, confused. Why not break in? Why slide a note? Was he working with Celeste, or was he running from her too? I looked down at my own doormat. There it was, a white envelope, just sitting there. I must have missed it in the dark when I came in earlier. I bent down and picked it up. My name was on it, written in Mateo's messy handwriting. Murrah. Just that. I ripped it open. My fingers were sweating. Inside was a single brass key, heavy, old school, and a scrap of paper. I unfolded it. The note was short. It read, "She's obsessed. You need to see this. Storage unit 304. I looked at the key. It felt cold in my palm. A storage unit? What does Mateo have in a storage unit, and why was he suddenly on my team? I sat on the floor. The universe really has a twisted sense of humor. I stared at the brass key in my palm. It felt heavy, cold, like a piece of a weapon I didn't understand yet. It was almost midnight. The city outside was quiet, too quiet. I looked at the scrap of paper again. Storage unit 304. Queens. Of course it was Queens. It's always Queens in the movies, isn't it? But this wasn't a movie. This was my Friday night. And I was about to break into a storage unit that my ex-husband's stalker ex-mistress told me about. I checked my phone. No car. The Honda was still at Tony's shop. Dead on the left. I needed a ride. I opened the Uber app. Pull. I'm not made of money, people. 5 minutes later, a gray Prius pulled up. I got in. The driver was blasting smooth jazz. I asked him to roll up the partition. He didn't have one. Great. I just stared out the window. The lights of the Manhattan Bridge blurred past. My hands were sweating. I wiped them on my jeans. I reached into my bra. The digital recorder was still there, warm against my skin. The red light was blinking. Recording. I pressed stop. I needed to focus. If I was walking into a trap, I didn't want the audio of my own death to be the only evidence. We crossed the river. The skyline faded into industrial smoke. We pulled up to a chain-link fence. Public storage. Bright orange letters. I paid the driver. I walked to the gate. It was locked. I typed in the code from the paper. 4421. The gate buzzed. Clicked open. I walked down row C, unit 300. Unit 300. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. Then I saw it. Unit 304. The lock was dangling. Open. I took a deep breath. The air smelled like rain and exhaust fumes. I grabbed the handle. It was cold metal. I pulled up. The metal door rattled. Loud. Like a gunshot in the silence. I froze. I waited. Nobody came. I lifted it all the way. I clicked on my flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness. I wasn't ready for what I saw. You aren't either. It wasn't boxes of old clothes. It wasn't furniture. It was a shrine. I stepped inside. The floor was concrete. There were candles everywhere, hundreds of them, some burned down to nubs. Wax dripped down the walls like tears. And the photos. Oh my God, the photos! They were everywhere, papering the walls from floor to ceiling, but they weren't of Mateo. They were of me. Me walking into Starbucks. Me laughing with Keisha in the park. Me in my pajamas. Inside my apartment. I felt my knees go weak. I leaned against the metal door frame. These went back years. One photo was from 2019. I was at a Christmas party. I remembered that red dress. How long had she been watching me? How long had she been in the shadows? I walked deeper into the unit. In the center, there was a small table. An altar. There was a framed picture of Celeste. She was wearing that silver ring, the one Mateo lost. The one I saw in her hand. Around the photo were tarot cards. The tower. The moon. The 10 of swords. And then I saw it. A small glass jar. Inside, there was a lock of dark, curly hair. My hand went to my head. I have curly hair. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. It was mine. It had to be mine. Next to the jar was a black leather notebook. It looked old. The corners were worn. I picked it up. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. I opened it to the last entry. The handwriting was jagged, sharp, like she was pressing the pen through the paper. She thinks the cards are magic, it read. She doesn't know I am the architect. I built the flood. I cut the brakes. I sent the email. Mateo thinks he won, but he forgot about 2018. I flipped the page. More dates. More plans. November 12th. Cut the brake line. Make it look like wear and tear. Tony is too stupid to know the difference. November 14th. Send a pigeon. A little gift. A sign of the swords to come. I slammed the book shut. I couldn't breathe. The air in the unit was thick. It smelled like sage. Sage. The smell from my apartment. She had been inside. She had been watching me sleep. Suddenly, a memory hit me. Hard. 2018. Mateo and I were sitting on the couch. He was drinking a beer. He looked annoyed. This girl I dated, he said. Before you? Celeste? She was intense. Like scary intense. He had waved his hand like he was swatting a fly. She claimed we were soulmates. When I broke it off, she keyed my car. She threatened my sister. I remember laughing. I told him he was being dramatic. I said, "No way, Jose. Nobody is that crazy." God, I was an idiot. I was the one buying the lottery tickets while the game was rigged. I looked back at the shrine. It wasn't a shrine to Mateo. It was a shrine to Celeste. She didn't want him back. She didn't want him dead. She wanted to prove she was a god. And we were just her toys. If you've ever had that moment where your reality just shatters, you know what this feels like. I stood there in the dark, surrounded by photos of my own face, watching myself being stalked for years. I thought this was about Mateo. I thought it was a messy divorce game. Property, money, custody of the cat. But I was wrong. I was just a player in a game between him and her. An old vendetta that I didn't even know existed. And I was the piece being sacrificed. I stood in Little Storage Unit 304. The air smelled like sage and old dust. I looked at the shrine one last time. The candles were flickering. My hair was in that jar. It was too much. I grabbed the black leather notebook off the table. I spun around and ran. I didn't close the rolling metal door. I didn't care. I just needed to breathe. I burst out into the parking lot. It was pitch black. The only light came from a buzzing street lamp. The air was cold. It felt good against my sweating skin. I stood there for a second. My heart was pounding in my ears. I looked down at the notebook in my hand. The leather was soft. It felt warm, like it had been held recently. I unlocked my iPhone with my shaking thumb. The screen glowed bright white in the dark. I scrolled through my contacts. I found him, the rat bastard. I hit the call button before I could talk myself out of it. It rang once, then twice. He picked up on the third ring. "Mara?" His voice sounded raspy. "Where are you?" "I've been trying to call you." "Shut up, Mateo," I said. I was surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "Did you know?" I asked him. There was a pause. A long, heavy pause. I could hear him breathing. "Did you know Celeste was the tarot reader?" Another pause. Then a sound. A pathetic, wet sound. Was he crying? I couldn't believe it. This man didn't cry when his dog died. But now he was sobbing into the phone. "I didn't think she'd do this," he choked out. I paced around the empty parking lot. Gravel crunched under my boots. "Tell me everything," I demanded. "Start at the beginning." He sniffed loud. "It was 2018. Before I met you. I leaned against the brick wall of the storage facility. It was rough against my coat. We were at a dive bar on the Lower East Side. I was drunk. She was there. I rolled my eyes. Classic Mateo. We went back to her apartment. That was it. Just one night. But she wouldn't let it go, I said. It wasn't a question. I knew the type. "Exactly," he said. "She started calling me, showing up at my gym. She was obsessed." "So you went to the Mystic Eye," I said. "I connected the dots. I went to pay her off," he admitted. "I thought if I gave her $500, she would leave me alone." I thought about the money I had given Celeste. The tips. The extra cash for candles. She was playing both of us. "But then she saw me with you," I said. "Yeah," he whispered. "We were getting coffee. She saw us on the street. She said the cards told her I was blocking your path. Ay, Dios mío." This woman is delusional. She said I had to be removed, Mateo said. She said she was going to break us apart, and she did. She broke us apart perfectly. So you knew, I said. My grip tightened on the phone. You knew she was the one doing the readings. I saw her name on your credit card statement, he confessed. I wanted to tell you, but she threatened me. What did she say? I asked. She said she'd tell the police about the taxes, he said. She said she'd destroy my career. So he was protecting himself. Again, I looked at the notebook, page 1, a list of dates, October 12th. Followed her to Bodega, November 3rd, cut brake line. It was all there. Her handwriting, her obsession. You let me walk into that shop, I said. The anger was rising in my chest. Hot and sharp. You watched me go there? You watched me sit with her. You knew she was dangerous. I was scared, Mara, he yelled. I'm still scared. You know that feeling when the rug gets pulled out from under you? But not by an enemy, by the person sleeping next to you. That was this moment. I found her shrine, Mateo, I said. I found your ring. I found the notebook. He went silent. Dead silent. She's not done, I said, and neither am I. I ended the call. I stood there in the dark. The call timer showed 1 hour and 12 minutes. 1 hour of confessions that were too little, too late. So he knew she was the tarot reader. And he didn't tell me because he was scared. He let me walk into that shop. I stood in that Queens parking lot until my teeth started chattering. It was freezing. The black notebook felt heavy in my hand, like a brick. I got an Uber back to the city. The driver tried to make small talk about the Knicks. I ignored him. I just clutched the tote bag against my chest. I didn't sleep. How could I? By the time the sun came up over the East River, I was vibrating. I took a freezing cold shower to wake up. I put on my power blazer. I checked the mirror. I looked like a wreck, but I looked like a dangerous wreck. By 2 o'clock, I was downtown. The Lower East Side. I stood outside the Mystic Eye for a full minute. The neon sign was buzzing. Buzz! Buzz! It sounded like an insect dying. You know that feeling right before you jump off a high dive? That was me. I touched my lapel. The spy camera was secure. The red light was on. We were live. I opened the door. The little bell jingled. The smell hit me first. Sage. Burning sage. My stomach turned over. It smelled like a church in there. The lights were low. Candles flickered on every shelf. Shadows danced against the purple walls. Celeste was behind the counter. She was arranging a shelf of crystals. She looked like she owned the world. I didn't say hello. I didn't ask for a reading. I walked straight to the round table in the center of the room. I reached into my bag. My fingers brushed the cold leather. I pulled out the notebook. I slammed it down on the velvet tablecloth. TIDUD. The impact shook the table. A crystal bowl tipped over. She looked at me. Then she looked at the book. I said, I know who you are, Celeste. I know about Mateo. I flipped the book open to the marked page. I pointed at the handwritten entry. November 3rd. Brake line severed. Honda Civic. I read. You wrote that. You tried to kill me. You want to know what the crazy part is? She didn't look scared. She looked relieved. She didn't try to run. She didn't deny it. She just smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was cold. It didn't reach her eyes. She walked around the table. She was wearing those heavy boots again. They didn't make a sound on the floorboards. She stopped right next to me. I could feel her body heat. Or maybe it was just cold radiating off her. She leaned down. Her lips brushed against my ear. I froze. My heart was hammering against my ribs. She whispered, I didn't do those things, Shomara. I didn't cut the brakes. I didn't send the bird. She pulled back. She looked me right in the eye. The cards did, she said. I just read them. She was completely psychotic. I stepped backward. My hip hit the shelf full of crystals. Amethyst and rose quartz rattled. It was the sound of my sanity breaking. I turned and walked out. The neon open sign buzzed above my head. I stood on the East Village sidewalk. 2nd Avenue was chaotic, taxi horns honking. People walking dogs with sweaters on. Nobody knew what just happened inside. Nobody knew that a psychic just confessed to murder. I checked my phone. 2 minutes exactly, that was the plan. Suddenly, a siren cut through the noise. Not the usual city wail. This one was close. An NYPD cruiser screeched to the curb in front of the Mystic Eye. Blue and red lights reflected off the shop window. It looked like a disco from hell. 2 officers got out, 1 male, 1 female. They looked serious. I held up the black leather notebook. My hand was shaking so hard the pages flapped. "She's inside," I said. "Celeste, she cut my brake lines. It's all written down here." I pointed to the lapel of my coat. "I have a camera too. It recorded everything." The female officer nodded. "Stay here, ma'am." They pushed through the purple curtain. The little bell jingled. It sounded mocking. I watched through the glass. Celeste was sitting at her table. She didn't stand up. I couldn't hear the audio, but I saw her face. She was smiling. It wasn't a crazy smile. It was a calm, terrifying smile. Like she won a prize. Then the officers turned her around. Click. Click. The handcuffs went on. They led her out to the sidewalk. The sun hit her face. She looked right at me. She didn't look angry. She looked relieved. The officer started reading her rights. "You have the right to remain silent." I heard the charges. Stalking in the 1st degree. Reckless endangerment. Attempted manslaughter. Attempted manslaughter? That phrase hit me in the chest. She actually wanted me dead. They guided her toward the back seat of the cruiser. She ducked her head. I caught her eye one last time. She mouthed something at me. "The cards?" That's what she said. The door slammed shut. The sound echoed on the brick buildings. Then the car drove away. The sirens faded into the distance. I stood there. My palms were sweating. I wiped them on my beige trench coat. I looked down at the notebook in my hand. The evidence was safe. I opened it to the last page. November 3rd. Cut the line. Watch her bleed. It was all there. Every psycho thought. Every evil act. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Keisha. "Where are you? Are you okay?" I didn't answer. I just stood there breathing. The air smelled like exhaust fumes and roasted nuts. It smelled like life. I realized I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore. I wasn't checking for pigeons on the fire escape. I was free, actually free. You know that feeling when the roller coaster finally stops? Your head is spinning, but you're safe. That was me. I sat down on a metal folding chair outside the bodega. The owner looked at me. I just shook my head. I felt a giggle rising in my throat. A nervous, hysterical giggle. I think I was in shock. My whole body was tingling. The sun was going down. The streetlights flickered on. A bus roared past. The wind blew a newspaper against my leg. I picked it up. It was the horoscope section. It said, "A sudden change in fortune is coming." No kidding, horoscope lady. No kidding. I looked at the empty spot where the police car had been. It was real. She was gone. It was over. The cards were burned. The witch was in jail. I could go back to my life. But before I celebrate, I need your help. If this story has you as shook as I am, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Drop a like if you survived this chapter with me. And please tell me in the comments what would you have done if she whispered in your ear. I read every single one. I sat on that metal folding chair until my legs went completely numb. The police cruiser turned the corner. The flashing blue lights finally disappeared. Just me, a bodega cat, and a crumpled horoscope section. My phone buzzed against the metal table. The screen lit up. 47 missed calls from Keisha. One text message, "Where are you? Please tell me you're safe." I typed back, "It's over. She's gone." 2 weeks later, I sat at my desk on Hudson Street. The office air smelled like stale coffee and bureaucracy. My laptop dinged. An email from HR. Subject line, "Welcome back." I clicked it open. Investigation concluded. IP address traced to the Williamsburg Public Library. The branch 2 blocks from Celeste's apartment. I stared at the pixelated letters. No, sorry for the trauma. Just, your badge excess works again. I took a deep breath. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, but sometimes the paperwork actually works. By Friday, the U-Haul was parked outside my building. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs. My keys jingled in the lock. It turned smoothly. The air inside smelled like fresh drywall and cheap primer. The watermark from the flood was gone. The floor was sanded down and varnished. It looked perfect. It felt like a stranger's house. Have you ever walked into your own home and felt like you were trespassing? Like you were waiting for permission to be there? It messes with your head. I unpacked a box of books. I placed Joan Didion back on the shelf. Then I froze. For a second, I smelled sage. That distinct, dusty, herbal scent. I spun around. The hallway was empty. Just the new paint drying. It was just a ghost in my nose. I double-locked the deadbolt. Then I checked it again. I pushed a chair against the door handle. Old habits die hard, especially when someone tried to kill you. That first night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The radiator hissed like a dying snake. A car backfired outside. My heart rate spiked to 120. I grabbed my phone, no notifications, just silence. The black leather notebook was in an evidence locker downtown. Celeste was in a cell. Mateo was somewhere, avoiding my lawyers. But my brain wouldn't shut up. I opened my Photos app. There it was. The picture I took in the storage unit. Celeste's hand. That heavy silver ring with the black onyx stone. I remembered Mateo buying that exact ring in 2017. He said he lost it at a gym in Queens. No way, Jose. He didn't lose it. He gave it to her. They were connected long before the divorce. Long before me. It wasn't just about the taxes. It was personal. Months passed. The fear turned into a dull ache in my chest. Keisha signed me up for Hinge. Just get back out there, she said. I want to know what you guys would do. Would you stay in the apartment, or would you burn the lease and move to a different state? Be honest in the comments. I sat at a cafe in the West Village. Across from me was a guy named Dave. He sold insurance. He chewed with his mouth open. It was perfect. I didn't ask about his star sign. I didn't ask about his exes. We talked about traffic and the price of bagels. It was boring. It was safe. I started dating again, nothing serious, just coffee. I was done with intense relationships. I was done with signs. You think you can just move on. You think you can date boring men and drink safe coffee. But the past, it always catches up. It's been 6 months since I watched the police car take Celeste away. 6 months of therapy, yoga, and absolutely zero drama. I'm living in a new apartment now. A high-rise with a doorman. No fire escapes. No pigeons. Just beige walls and safety. I've been seeing this guy, Dave. He sells insurance. He's perfect. He's so boring I could scream. Yesterday I was sitting on my couch. I was watching a documentary about penguins. Just a normal Tuesday. Then my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It wasn't a text, it was my Ring app. Motion detected at front door. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. I picked up the phone and tapped the screen. The black and white footage popped up. It was timestamped 11:30 a.m. I saw a figure standing there. They were wearing a hood and a mask, not a surgical mask, a heavy-duty respirator mask, like a hazmat suit. They dropped something on the mat. Then they turned and ran. They were gone in 2 seconds. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. That instinct you can't unlearn. The instinct that says run. I walked to the door slowly. I checked the peephole. The hallway was empty. Just the beige carpet and the sterile silence. I unlocked the deadbolt. I opened the door. There it was. A brown cardboard package. No shipping label, no return address. Just my name written in black Sharpie, Ixiomara. I didn't touch it. Not at first. I just stared at it. It looked innocent enough. But I knew better. I picked it up. It was light. Too light. I brought it inside and locked the door. 3 locks. I walked to the kitchen island. I put the box down on the marble counter. I grabbed a knife from the block. I sliced the tape open. The cardboard fell away. Inside was a deck of cards. Tarot cards. They were wrapped in black silk. And a note. A single piece of parchment paper. I unfolded it with shaking hands. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Sharp, jagged letters. Angry loops. It was the same handwriting from the black notebook. The notebook that was supposed to be evidence in a police locker. The note said, "The tower is still standing for now." I dropped the note. My hands were trembling so hard I had to grab the counter. I looked at the cards again. I didn't need to flip them over. I knew what they were. They were a message. A threat. I grabbed my phone. I dialed Detective Miller's number. It rang 4 times. "Miller," he grunted. "It's Shomara," I said. "Someone left a package at my door." I heard him sigh. "Describe it." "Cards," I said. tarot cards, and a note in Celeste's handwriting. He went silent on the other end. The silence was louder than screaming. "She's out, isn't she?" I whispered. "Yeah," he said. His voice sounded tired. "She made bail last week. A technicality with the evidence chain of custody." I felt my knees buckle. I leaned against the island. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "We thought she'd skipped town," he said. "She's gone. Off the grid." "She's not gone," I said, looking at the note on the counter. "She's sending me mail. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done, because I froze. I just stood there in my safe beige apartment, and I realized the safety was an illusion. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, right? Just when you think the story is over, the villain walks back in. Only this time, she's not in jail. She's in the wind. And now she's sending me mail. The tower is still standing. For now. That is what the note said. I was standing in my kitchen. The beige granite felt cold under my palms. I thought I was safe here. Doorman, key fob, the whole deal. But Celeste found me. She always finds me. I looked at the brown cardboard package on the counter. No return address, no shipping label, just duct tape. My hands were shaking so bad I ripped the silk wrapping. The cards slid out onto the marble counter. They felt heavy, dense, like they held a secret. I picked up the top card. The back was intricate. Gold filigree. I turned it over. Blank. Just stark white cardstock. I turned over the next one. Blank. I shuffled through them. The Fool, the Lovers, Death. All of them. Every single card was blank. 52 cards. 52 blanks. I let out a nervous laugh. "Okay, very funny," I said to the empty room. But I did not feel like laughing. I reached the bottom of the deck. The last card. It felt thicker. Rougher edges. My stomach dropped. I flipped it over. It was not a tarot card. It was a photograph. A glossy, high-resolution photo. It was me. I was sleeping. You could see my curly hair fanned out across the pillow. You could see the mole on my left shoulder. I was wearing that red tank top I bought on sale. I recognized the comforter immediately. The white duvet with the gray stripes. I recognized the angle. It was not taken from a doorway. It was taken from high up, from the ceiling corner, right above my headboard. I dropped the card. It hit the floor with a slap. I gagged. I actually gagged. She had been in my bedroom. She had stood over my bed while I slept. She watched me breathe. Do you know how violating that feels? It is not just scary. It is disgusting. I felt dirty, like I needed to scrub my skin off with steel wool. I backed away from the counter, my back at the fridge. I scanned the apartment. The living room was quiet, too quiet. The AC hummed. That was the only sound. Was she here, hiding in a closet, under the sink? I grabbed the biggest knife I had, a chef's knife. I gripped the handle so tight my knuckles turned white. I walked toward the hallway. The floorboards did not creak. These were new floors. Expensive. I reached the bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open with my foot. The bed was messy. Sheets tangled. Pillows on the floor. It looked like a crime scene. I checked the ensuite bathroom. The shower curtain was open. Empty. I checked the walk-in closet. Coat swaying slightly in the draft. Nobody there. I dropped to my knees. I checked under the bed. Just a dust bunny and a single sock. I stood up. I looked at the ceiling. The ceiling was white. Painted recently. There was the smoke detector. Round, plastic. I stared at it. It looked off. It was tilted. Just a little bit to the left. Smoke detectors are supposed to be straight. I dragged the vanity stool over to the center of the room. The legs scraped against the hardwood, screeching loud in the silence. I climbed up. My face was inches from the white plastic dome. I squinted. I looked through the mesh vents. And there it was. A tiny red light. Blinking. Once. Twice. 3 times. It was a camera. She was watching me right now. And that is when the realization hit. She did not just break in today. She installed that camera weeks ago. Maybe months ago. I had been living in a reality TV show, and I was the only one who did not know. That red light was blinking at me, like a tiny mechanical heartbeat, staring right at my bed. I looked at the photo on the comforter. Me. Sleeping. Wearing that red tank top. I saw the timestamp in the corner, October 12th. That was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks. She'd been watching me for 2 weeks. I grabbed the heavy marble lamp from the nightstand. My hand was shaking. I didn't think. I just swung. Crash. The white plastic exploded. Debris rained down on my pillows. I knelt on the duvet, breathing hard. There was a circuit board on the sheet and a tiny glass lens. It was pointed right where my head rests. I saw a Wi-Fi antenna on the chip. It was streaming live. Have you ever felt that violated? Like your skin is trying to crawl off your bones? I looked around the bedroom. My eyes were darting everywhere. The air vent, the smoke detector in the hall, the mirror. Was she listening right now? Was she laughing at me? I grabbed my passport from the drawer, then my wallet. I ran to the walk-in closet. I grabbed the oversized canvas tote. I threw in handfuls of clothes, no folding, just pure chaos. Socks, 3 pairs of jeans, my vintage leather jacket. I grabbed my laptop, the charger, my backup hard drive. I ran into the bathroom. I grabbed my toothbrush and the bottle of Xanax from the counter. I was gonna need those. I grabbed the framed photo of my mom. I couldn't leave her behind. I dialed Keisha with one hand while zipping the bag with the other. She picked up on the first ring. Mara, what's wrong? I said. She was here. Keisha. She had a camera in the smoke detector. Keisha's voice dropped. Where are you now? I said, leaving. I am never coming back to this apartment. I didn't lock the front door. I left it wide open. Let the police investigate. Let the ghosts have it. I got into the elevator and mashed the lobby button. The doorman looked at me. I was in sweatpants and no makeup. I hailed a cab to JFK. I didn't look at the skyline. 12 hours later, I was walking through the terminals at LAX. The California sun was hitting my face. It was warm. It was real. It didn't smell like sage or old secrets. It smelled like the ocean. I sat on a bench outside baggage claim. I watched the planes land. I deleted the Tarot app from my phone. I deleted my browser history. The universe tried to write a tragedy for me, but I decided to rewrite the ending. No more cards, no more fate. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done. Would you have stayed and fought? Or would you have run like I did? I walked out of that apartment and I didn't look back. I changed my number. I moved to LA. I don't do tarot anymore. If the story meant something to you, do me a favor. I read every single one. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I've got more stories to tell. And some of them are even worse than this one. Like this video if you made it to the end. And drop a comment. Tell me what you would have done. It's been exactly 365 days since I landed at LAX. I know the date because I marked it on my phone. Red exclamation points, no alerts. I'm sitting at an outdoor table in Vermont Avenue. The sun is blinding here. It doesn't hide behind buildings like in New York. It attacks you. I'm wearing oversized sunglasses. I'm wearing a hat. I'm hiding in plain sight. My latte costs $9. It tastes like dust and validation. I moved here to escape the gray, to escape the bricks, to escape the memory of those hands. A guy at the next table stood up to leave. He was wearing a white linen shirt. Very screenwriter energy. You know the type. He reached for his wallet in his messenger bag. His elbow hit the table. Crash. His water glass tipped over. But that wasn't the worst part. His bag tipped over too. A wallet, a pair of Ray-Bans, and a deck of tarot cards. They scattered across the pavement like dead leaves. I didn't want to look. My brain was screaming at me to stay seated. Don't do it, Mara, I thought, but I stood up anyway. Politeness is a curse. I knelt on the hot concrete. My knees popped audibly. I reached for a card that landed near my foot. It was face down. I turned it over in my hand. The cardboard felt smooth. Too smooth. Then I saw the back. My heart stopped. Literally stopped. Deep indigo blue. Vintage Art Nouveau style. A crescent moon and stars etched in gold foil. I know that design. I see it in my nightmares. It was the exact same deck Celeste used. The one she shuffled while plotting to cut my brake lines. The one she touched while wearing my ring. The guy was crouching beside me. He was laughing. A warm, easy laugh. Sorry about that, he said. Total klutz today. He reached for the card I was holding. Our fingers brushed. His hand was warm. Mine were ice cold. He looked me in the eye. He smiled. Expect a miracle, he said. The air left my lungs. Expect a miracle. That was the phrase. The exact phrase Celeste whispered the day I met her. The hairs on my arms stood up. I looked at the guy's face. Was it a mask? Was this a setup? Is she watching me right now? Then I saw his wrist, a silver bracelet. Not a ring, but the stone was black onyx. Ay Dios mío. My stomach turned over. He looked so normal. That's what scared me the most. I stood up abruptly. I dropped the card like it burned my skin. I have to go, I mumbled. My voice cracked. I didn't wait for a response. I grabbed my tote bag. I walked fast. Then I ran. I could hear the street vendors laughing. I could hear the traffic on the 101. It sounded like static, like white noise. I got to my car. A rented silver Honda. Safe. Anonymous. I fumbled with the keys. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't find the keyhole. I got in. I slammed the door. I hit the locks. I checked the back seat. Empty. Just a discarded gym bag. I looked in the rearview mirror. My face was pale. I looked like a ghost. I know what you're thinking. Mara, you're paranoid. It's just a coincidence. It's a popular deck design. Maybe the universe isn't plotting against me. Maybe I'm just traumatized. But I need you guys to tell me. Would you have stayed? Or would you have run like I did? If this story hit you as hard as it hit me, drop a like. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I have a feeling this isn't over. And please, drop a comment. I read every single one. I put the car in drive. I pulled onto the freeway. I'm going to the beach. I'm gonna sit in the sand until the sun goes down. I dropped the card back there. I ran to my car. I know it's probably a coincidence, but I also know the cards always tell the truth.